You ever get that feeling, like when you first start seeing someone,
Hmm.
all that excitement, that new relationship
Oh,
energy?
yeah, for sure. Like fireworks and butterflies, the whole nine yards.
Exactly. But then, like somewhere down the line, things kind of shift.
Yeah. The honeymoon phase fades a bit. Happens to the best of us.
Right. Like the laughter isn't as easy, maybe a few more awkward silences. And some things they do.
Mm.
Well, they just make you go, huh,
Yeah, those little moments that make you pause. Not quite red flags, but maybe like dot orange flags.
orange flags. I like that. It's like this little voice in your head whispers, hold on, is something to dot off here.
And that little voice, it's usually worth listening to.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Those subtle signs a relationship might not be built to last. The stuff we might not always want to admit, even to ourselves.
It's not about being pessimistic, right? It's about being informed and protecting ourselves.
100%. It's about recognizing those signs early on so we can make healthy choices for our own happiness.
Absolutely.
So have you ever felt lonelier with your partner than when you're actually alone?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a real head scratcher, isn't it?
It is, because logically, you're with someone, right?
Right. You're sharing space, maybe cuddling on the couch, but emotionally.
That's like a different story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like being in a room full of people, but feeling completely invisible.
Someone described it to me once as like sitting right next to their partner, practically on top of them, but feeling this overwhelming wave of loneliness wash over them.
Wow. That's powerful. And it speaks to the difference between just physical presence and true emotional intimacy.
Right. Like you could be physically close, even holding hands, but your hearts aren't connecting.
Exactly. It's often about a lack of vulnerability, that feeling of really being seen and understood by the other person.
Yeah, it's like when you try to have those deeper conversations, share your inner world, but it hits a wall.
And you start to question yourself, right? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I asking for too much?
All the time. But the truth is, it might just be that the other person isn't capable of or willing to meet you at that level.
Right, and that's okay to recognize. It's not about blame. It's about compatibility and emotional needs.
And sometimes those needs just don't match up.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another tricky one. What about when your partner doesn't really celebrate your wins or even acknowledge your struggles?
Oh man, this one hits close to home for a lot of people.
It does. Because true support in a relationship isn't just about being there for the tough times, it's about sharing the joys, too.
Totally. Like, remember Sarah, worked her butt off to get into grad school, finally got accepted to her dream program.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
She told her boyfriend, all excited, expecting some celebration, and he just goes, cool, guess you'll be too busy for me now.
Ouch. That's not the reaction you'd hope for.
Nope. It's like your achievements are seen as a negative, almost a threat, instead of something to be happy about together.
And on the flip side, there's the minimizing of your problems. When you're stressed or anxious and they brush it off.
Oh, you're always so dramatic.
Exactly. Or they just change the subject completely.
It's like your feelings are being totally invalidated.
It really is. And in a healthy relationship, both the good and bad times are shared. It's about emotional support in both directions.
Makes you wonder if it's even a partnership at that point.
It can feel more like parallel play than a true team effort.
And that leads to another common issue. When the relationship feels less like a natural flow and more like constant negotiation.
The negotiation phase. Don't get me wrong, compromise is healthy.
Of course.
But when everything feels like a debate.
From where to eat to what to watch on TV.
It's exhausting.
Totally. And it starts to feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells.
I read a comment online once that perfectly captured this. Someone said their relationship felt like a full-time job just trying to keep the peace.
Wow, I can relate to that.
Every little thing was a potential argument waiting to happen. They couldn't relax or be themselves.
It's like that easy, natural flow just isn't there.
Yeah.
When you're truly compatible, you don't have to negotiate every single preference.
Right. There's a natural rhythm to disagreements, a willingness to compromise because you care about the other person's happiness.
And when it's a constant battle, well, it might be a sign that the relationship is more forced than natural.
And forced things often break under pressure.
Speaking of breaking, let's talk about something that can be truly damaging. When a partner weaponizes your vulnerability.
Oh, this is a tough one. Because when we open up to someone, share our deepest fears and insecurities.
It's an act of deep trust.
Exactly. And it should be met with care and respect.
But sometimes those very things we confide in them get used against us. especially during arguments.
It's a huge betrayal. It's like those vulnerable parts of ourselves become weapons in their hands.
Right. You admit to being afraid of abandonment, and they threaten to leave. You share past trauma, and they mock you for being sensitive.
It can be incredibly hurtful and make you feel unsafe to share anything real.
Like you have to constantly guard yourself, even with the person who's supposed to love you most.
And that's not healthy. It's creating a dynamic of fear and distrust, which is the opposite of what love should be.
Absolutely. And it's a slippery slope to another red flag. When you find yourself constantly making excuses for their bad behavior.
The mental gymnastics of love, we've all been there.
They're just stressed, they didn't mean it, maybe I'm overreacting.
The endless justifications.
But it's like we're trying to convince ourselves that something is okay, when deep down we know it's not.
And it's important to ask ourselves, would they make those same excuses for us if the roles were reversed?
Exactly. It's about honesty and self-respect. We deserve partners who treat us with kindness and consideration, not ones we constantly have to make excuses for.
And speaking of things fading away, what about when the laughter stops?
Oh, this one's subtle but significant.
It is, because shared laughter is a powerful bonding agent. It's a sign of joy, connection, and ease.
Think about those early days. All the silly inside jokes, the easy banter.
That's laughing so hard your stomach hurts.
But then it starts to fade. The conversations become more serious, maybe even a little strained.
There's a heaviness that wasn't there before.
Right. Someone I know realized they hadn't genuinely laughed with their partner in months.
Wow, that's telling.
It was like the joy had seeped out of the relationship, leaving this empty space behind.
And it's not just about jokes. It's about that feeling of lightheartedness, of being able to be silly and carefree with someone who gets your sense of humor.
Yeah, it's about feeling connected and emotionally safe.
And when that goes missing, it's a sign that the emotional bond is weakening.
Here's a quick gut check. If you had to describe your relationship in 3 words, would fun be one of them?
Ooh, good question.
If not, that's definitely something to pay attention to.
Because life is tough enough. We deserve relationships that bring us joy, not just stress and obligation.
Now let's talk about a modern dating dilemma.
Yeah.
When they're too busy for you, but somehow always online.
Oh, yes. The busy paradox. We've all seen it.
Unanswered texts, canceled plans. I'm swamped with work.
But then you see them posting on social media, liking pictures, commenting on threads.
It's like, wait a minute, where'd you find the time for that?
It highlights a very important point. It's not about actual availability, it's about priorities.
Right. Because everyone gets busy, but if someone cares about you, they'll make an effort.
Exactly. Even a quick text, a thinking of you message, takes seconds. It's about showing that you care, that the other person is on your mind.
I heard about someone whose partner was constantly too busy for them, but would spend hours online gaming with friends.
Ouch.
The realization was it wasn't about time, it was about desire. They simply didn't prioritize the relationship.
And that can be a hard pill to swallow.
It is. But it's important to remember, we deserve to be with people who want to make time for us, not ones who constantly make excuses.
Absolutely.
Now, this next one can be a little bittersweet. When the relationship seems to live mostly in the past.
Oh, the remember when trap?
It can be sweet at first, right? Reminiscing about good times, those early days when everything was new and exciting.
Nostalgia can be comforting.
It can. But when it becomes the main focus, when every conversation starts with, remember when.
It might be a sign that the present isn't so great.
Exactly. It's like the highlight reel is on repeat because the current movie isn't that interesting.
A friend once told me their relationship felt like it was built entirely on nostalgia. They'd talk about their amazing first date, that incredible trip they took.
But the present was pretty disconnected.
Exactly. They were clinging to memories because the present wasn't fulfilling.
It's like trying to water a plant with old rainwater. It's not giving it what it needs to grow.
That's a great analogy.
So it's important to ask ourselves, are we making new memories? Are we still dreaming and planning for the future together?
Or are we stuck in the past, afraid to face the reality of the present?
Because a relationship that's not moving forward is often slowly slipping away.
And sometimes letting go of the past is the best way to make space for something new and healthier.
Now let's talk about a feeling that can be really unsettling. When you feel more anxious than excited around your partner.
The difference between butterflies and that knot of dread in your stomach.
Exactly. In the beginning, there's that happy flutter of anticipation when you see their name pop up on your phone.
But when things start to go sour, That flutter turns into anxiety.
Right. You start overthinking every text, every interaction, constantly wondering if you've done something wrong.
You might feel like you're walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do the wrong thing.
It's exhausting.
It is. Because healthy love should feel safe and secure, not anxiety-inducing.
Someone online described it as their stomach dropping every time their partner called.
Wow. It's like the opposite of that excited feeling you get when you really like someone.
It's a sign that something's off, that the emotional safety is gone.
And when you feel more at ease alone than with your partner, that's a red flag worth paying attention to.
Because love shouldn't feel like a constant state of worry and stress.
It should feel like a haven, a source of peace and comfort.
Absolutely. And this next one can be a real heartbreaker, especially if you're hoping for a future together. When they talk about their future and you're not in it.
The painful omissions.
Right. It's not always a direct, I don't see us together long term.
Sometimes it's more subtle.
Exactly. It's in the way they talk about their plans. When I move to city, when I have kids, when I travel the world.
And there's no we in those statements.
Nope. It's like they're envisioning a future solo and you're just a spectator.
I heard a story about a couple who'd been together for years. The guy laid out this detailed 5-year plan, all about his career goals, his travel ambitions.
And his partner wasn't even mentioned.
Not once. It was like they didn't even factor into his vision of the future.
That's got hurt.
It does. And while everyone has the right to their own dreams, it's about how those dreams align with the person you're with.
Right. Because when you're truly invested in a shared future, you talk about it together, you make plans together.
You become we, not just me.
And if you're constantly hearing about their solo adventures, it might be time to face the music.
It's hard, but sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let go of a future that's not meant for us.
Now, let's talk about a more internal shift. That moment when you realize you don't quite feel like yourself anymore.
Oh, the slow fade of self.
Oh.
It's sneaky.
It is. It happens so gradually you might not even notice it at first.
Until one day you look in the mirror and think, who is this person?
Right. Someone described it to me as becoming quieter, more cautious, constantly second-guessing themselves.
So it's like dimming your own light to avoid rocking the boat.
Exactly. You start silencing your opinions, your passions, your quirks.
All the things that make you unique.
And a healthy relationship should be a space where you feel safe to be your full, authentic self.
Absolutely. It should be a celebration of who you are, not a requirement to shrink or change.
And if you find yourself constantly censoring yourself, walking on eggshells.
It might be a sign that the relationship is stifling your true nature.
And sometimes it's our loved ones who see this before we do.
Oh yeah, the outside perspective can be so valuable.
Because when we're in the thick of it, it's hard to be objective.
Love can blind us to certain realities.
It can. But our friends and family often see things more clearly.
They notice the changes in our behavior, our energy, our overall happiness.
I remember reading about someone whose best friend finally said, "You're not the same anymore. You're always tired, always defending him, always making excuses."
Wow, that's a tough but necessary conversation.
It is. And it can be hard to hear, but those who love us are often the first to see the cracks in our relationships.
And their concern isn't about sabotage, it's about protecting us.
Exactly. So if multiple people are expressing similar worries, it's worth taking a step back and listening.
Because they might be seeing something we're too close to recognize.
Now let's tackle a big one, conflict. Specifically, when it starts to feel unsafe.
Ugh, yeah. Disagreements are normal in any relationship.
Of course. It's how we handle them that matters.
Exactly. Healthy conflict involves respect, listening, and finding solutions together.
But when conflict feels unsafe, it creates a whole different dynamic.
It means you don't feel comfortable expressing your needs or concerns.
Right. You might find yourself holding back, avoiding certain topics, or even walking on eggshells.
Because you're afraid of the consequences.
Maybe it's yelling, maybe it's the silent treatment, maybe it's gaslighting.
Whatever it is, it makes you feel unsafe to be honest and vulnerable.
And that can lead to resentment and a breakdown of communication.
I heard a story about a woman whose partner would call her too sensitive whenever she tried to set boundaries.
So she just stopped trying.
Eventually, yes. She felt like she couldn't speak her truth without being punished for it.
That's heartbreaking.
It is, and it highlights the importance of feeling safe to express ourselves in a relationship.
Because if we can't be honest with our partners, who can we be honest with?
And that constant feeling of being on edge, of having to protect yourself emotionally.
It's draining.
It is. And that brings us to another big sign. when the relationship feels more draining than fulfilling.
Ah, yeah. It's like the energy balance is all out of whack.
Exactly. Healthy love should energize us, support us, and make us feel good.
But sometimes it can feel like the opposite.
Like it's taking more than it's giving.
Right. You're constantly giving, compromising, trying to keep things afloat.
And you're left feeling exhausted and depleted.
I talked to someone who said they were spending more time recovering from their relationship than enjoying it.
Wow, it's like the relationship became a source of stress instead of a source of support.
And that's not sustainable.
No, it's not. We deserve relationships that make us feel good, not ones that leave us constantly drained and unhappy.
And finally, this might sound a little meta, but if you're watching videos or listening to podcasts like this,
Hoping for some clarity about your relationship.
that might be the biggest sign of all.
It's like your intuition is trying to tell you something.
Exactly. It's that little voice in the back of your head saying, something's not right.
And it's okay to listen to that voice. It's okay to question things, to seek out information, to talk to trusted friends.
Because sometimes the act of searching for answers is the answer itself.
It's a sign that you're aware, that you're paying attention, that you're not willing to settle for less than you deserve.
And we all deserve relationships that bring us joy, not ones that leave us constantly questioning and doubting.
Absolutely. You deserve to feel loved, seen, and appreciated for exactly who you are.
So trust your gut, listen to your heart, and don't be afraid to make choices that prioritize your own happiness.
Because you deserve a love that sets your soul on fire, not one that leaves you feeling burnt out.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we hope this has given you some food for thought.
Remember, recognizing the signs is the first step towards creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.